Picture this. It is 2:47 in the morning. You are lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, and your brain just will not shut off. It keeps running the same numbers over and over. The boiler made a weird noise last week. Your phone contract is almost up. You have not been to the dentist in almost 2 years, because every single time you think about booking that appointment, something else comes up that feels more urgent. And somewhere underneath all of that, there is this quiet, constant hum of anxiety that never fully goes away. You do not even know exactly what you are scared of, just something. Some version of tomorrow where everything breaks down at once and you have got nothing left to catch you. Sound familiar? Because if it does, I want you to know something important. That feeling has a name. And more importantly, it has a cure. And that cure is not $1 million. It is not even 100,000. The number that changes everything is $10,000. My name is Miller, and I spend way too much time thinking about money, human psychology, and why some people seem to move through financial uncertainty like they were built for it, while others are lying awake at 2:47 in the morning running numbers that never quite add up. If that second description sounds like you right now, stay with me. Because today we're going to talk about the most underrated financial milestone in existence. And by the end of this video, I want you to understand not just what $10,000 does for your bank account, but what it does to your brain, your career, your relationships, and your entire sense of who you are. If this is the kind of content that actually helps you, go ahead and hit that subscribe button right now. And if this video shifts something for you, drop a comment below. Tell me where you are in the journey. I read every single one. Before we get into what $10,000 does for you, let me paint you the clearest possible picture of what life looks like without it. Not as a lecture, as a mirror. You are at the grocery store on a Thursday evening. You have got a basket in your hand. You pick up the pasta you actually like. Then you put it back and grab the cheaper one. Not because you are being smart about money, because you are running a silent calculation in the back of your mind that never stops. You are estimating your account balance, subtracting the direct debits coming out next week, trying to remember if you already paid the electric bill or if that one is still pending. And while you are doing all of that mental arithmetic, you are also trying to decide between 2 packs of pasta that are maybe 40 cents different in price. This is what researchers call decision fatigue. And most people living paycheck to paycheck do not even realize it is happening because it has been happening for so long that it just feels normal. Every single financial decision, no matter how small, runs through the same exhausted mental processor. Can I afford this? What do I have to give up if I buy this? What happens if something goes wrong before my next paycheck? The result is not just stress. The result is cognitive depletion. By the time you have made a couple hundred of these micro calculations before noon, you have burned through mental resources you needed for your actual work, your actual relationships, your actual life. Financial anxiety does not just make you tired, it makes you worse at everything. And here is the brutal part. The people who have the hardest time saving money are the exact same people who most need the mental relief that saving money provides. It is a cruel loop. The less you have, the harder it is to think clearly. The harder it is to think clearly, the harder it is to make the decisions that would help you build more. But the loop can be broken. And $10,000 is exactly where it breaks. There is a concept in behavioral economics called the scarcity mindset, developed by researchers Sendil Mullainathan and Eldar Shafir at Harvard and Princeton. What they found after years of studying how financial stress affects human cognition is that when people feel like they do not have enough, their minds become completely consumed by that lack. It is not a character flaw, it is neuroscience. Scarcity literally hijacks your mental bandwidth, the same way a pop-up ad hijacks your screen. Except this pop-up never closes. When you have no financial cushion, your brain is running a constant background program called threat detection. It is always scanning for danger. Every unexpected expense, every little wobble in your income, every time your phone buzzes with a notification that might be your bank, your stress hormones spike. Cortisol goes up. Your heart rate climbs. Your body treats financial uncertainty the exact same way it treats being chased by something dangerous. Because to your nervous system, they feel identical. Now here is what changes at 10,000. The research is actually pretty specific on this. A study published in the journal Social Science and Medicine found that having just $2,000 in liquid savings was enough to reduce psychological distress by a statistically significant margin. Not having it locked up in investments, not having it tied up in a retirement account, having it accessible, knowing it is there. At $10,000, you are not just above that threshold. You are in a completely different category. You have moved from what researchers call scarcity mode into something they describe as resource adequacy. And the shift is not gradual. People who have crossed this line consistently describe it as something that happens almost overnight. You wake up one morning and realize the background noise has stopped. That constant low-level hum of financial anxiety that you had been living with for so long, you forgot it was even there. Gone. Or at least quiet enough that you can finally hear yourself think. But here is something most personal finance content never actually talks about. The most powerful thing about having $10,000 saved is not what you can do with it. It is what you know you do not have to do. Think about the last time you had a really rough week at work. A difficult boss, a project that went sideways, a meeting that left you feeling undervalued and kind of stuck. If you had no savings, what were your options? You could vent to a friend. You could lie awake processing it at 2:47 in the morning. You could fantasize about quitting. But you could not actually quit. Because quitting without savings is not a choice, it is a catastrophe. Now imagine that exact same week, that exact same boss, that exact same difficult meeting. But this time you have got $10,000 sitting in an account. Nothing about the situation changes, but everything about how you experience it changes. Because somewhere in the back of your mind, you know you could leave. You have got 3 to 6 months of breathing room, depending on your expenses. You have the option. You probably will not use it, but you have it. And this is the thing about financial security that nobody explains properly. It is not about spending the money. It is about the psychological permission the money gives you. When you know you could walk away from a bad situation, you stop being trapped by it. And paradoxically, that usually means you actually handle the situation better. You negotiate. You set boundaries. You hold your ground. Because you are not operating from desperation anymore. There is a concept in negotiation theory called BATNA. Your best alternative to a negotiated agreement. The core idea is simple. The strength of your position in any negotiation depends entirely on how good your best alternative is. If you have no alternative, you will accept almost anything. If you have a strong alternative, you can hold out for what you actually deserve. $10,000 in savings is your financial BATNA. It changes every negotiation you walk into, every salary conversation, every job interview, every interaction with a landlord or a service provider. Not because you tell anyone about it, but because you know it is there. And that knowledge changes how you carry yourself in ways that other people can feel, even when they cannot explain exactly why. Let me introduce you to two people. I am going to call them Sarah and James. Sarah earns about $42,000 a year. She is really good at her job. She has been at her company for 4 years. 6 months ago, she found out that a colleague doing essentially the same role was being paid nearly $8,000 more than her. She was furious. She rehearsed the conversation with her manager about 20 times in her head, and then she just did not have it. Because the thought of what might happen if it went badly, if the relationship soured, if somehow it led to her getting let go, was too terrifying. She could not risk it. She had $140 in savings. James earns about $38,000 a year. He's also good at his job. He had a very similar conversation with his manager last fall. He had done his research, he knew his market value, and he asked clearly and directly for a raise. His manager said he needed some time to think about it. James said he totally understood, and that he was also exploring other opportunities in the market, and that he wanted to give his company the first shot at keeping him. 6 weeks later, he got a $4,000 raise. James had $11,000 in savings. The difference between Sarah and James was not talent. It was not even confidence in the way most people think about confidence. It was leverage. James had a cushion that meant the worst-case outcome of that conversation was not financial disaster. It was just an uncomfortable few weeks while he found something better. That knowledge changed how he sat in that room, how he spoke, how he responded when his manager pushed back. It literally changed the outcome. This is playing out in workplaces everywhere, every single day. The people who negotiate well are not always the most talented or the most experienced. They are often simply the least desperate, and the fastest way to become less desperate is to have money in the bank. Now let us talk about what $10,000 actually protects you from in real, practical terms. Because one of the most powerful things about this specific number is how precisely it maps to the financial disasters that derail people's lives. The average car repair in most parts of the country costs somewhere between $300 and $2,000 for the most common problems. A new set of tires, a clutch replacement, brake pads, an alternator failure. None of these should destroy your financial stability. But without savings, they frequently do. People put them on credit cards at high interest rates. They borrow from family. They take out short-term loans. They delay the repair and let a small problem turn into an expensive one. With $10,000 accessible, every one of these situations becomes what it should be. An inconvenience. Annoying, sure. Expensive, absolutely. But not a crisis, not a reason to lie awake at 2:47 in the morning. Medical costs carry financial weight even in countries with strong public healthcare systems. Private dental work, physiotherapy, optical appointments, mental health support that is not immediately available through public services. A report from the Commonwealth Fund found that over a third of adults in the United Kingdom have delayed or avoided some form of medical care in recent years due to cost concerns. $10,000 in savings does not make you immune to health expenses, but it removes the calculation. You get the appointment, you fill the prescription. You do not wait until something minor turns serious because waiting was cheaper in the short term. And then there is job loss, which is the financial scenario that scares people the most and which is now more common than it has ever been. Economic shifts, automation, restructuring, redundancy. These are not unusual events anymore. They are normal features of working life in the 21st century. And without a financial buffer, losing your job is not just an employment problem, it is an existential one. You take the first offer because you have no choice. You cannot afford to wait. With $10,000, you have 3 to 6 months depending on your cost of living, 3 to 6 months to be selective, to do your research, to negotiate properly, to find something that actually fits your skills and your ambitions rather than just your immediate need for a paycheck. That difference between taking the first available job and finding the right one can shape the entire trajectory of your career. Here's something that the personal finance industry does not talk about nearly enough. The compound effect of $10,000 is not primarily financial. It is social. When you are constantly stressed about money, It affects how you show up in every single relationship in your life. Research from the American Psychological Association has consistently found that financial stress is one of the top 2 causes of conflict in long-term relationships. Not because money itself causes conflict, but because the anxiety around money makes people irritable, withdrawn, defensive, and less present. You are physically in the room, but you are not really there. Part of your brain is always somewhere else, running numbers, anticipating disasters, preparing for the next financial emergency that has not happened yet. There is also the social avoidance that happens when money is tight. You stop going to things. You say no to dinners out, to weekend trips, to events that cost money you do not have. And slowly, quietly, you start feeling more isolated. You see your friends less. You make excuses that are technically true but not quite honest. And that isolation compounds the stress. Because the human connection that would actually help you feel better is the exact same thing your financial situation is making harder to maintain. Think about someone you know, maybe a previous version of yourself, who turned down social invitations over and over because of money. How much did that cost in terms of relationships, in terms of opportunities, in terms of mental health? How many connections were never made? How many conversations never happened? How many collaborations never started? $10,000 does not make you wealthy, but it makes you present again. It gives you just enough breathing room to say yes sometimes, to actually show up, to invest in relationships without doing mental arithmetic first. And relationships, in the most practical sense possible, are the infrastructure on which careers and opportunities are built. Now, here is where we need to have a really honest conversation, because this is the part that most financial content skips, and I think it is actually the most important thing I am going to say today. The hardest thing about saving $10,000 is not the math. If you earn $30,000 a year and save $200 a month, you will hit $10,000 in about 4 years. If you earn more or can save more aggressively, you get there faster. The arithmetic is not the hard part. The hard part is the identity shift. And this is where most people fail. Not because they lack discipline, because they are trying to apply discipline to an identity that was not built for saving. Most people who struggle with money have spent years telling themselves a story that they are bad with money, that they spend everything they earn, that they always have nothing left at the end of the month. This is not laziness. This is an identity. And identities are incredibly difficult to change through willpower alone, because every time you try to save and something goes wrong, that failure confirms the story you already believed about yourself. The people who actually succeed at building savings do not think of it as an act of willpower. They think of it as an act of becoming. They are not trying to save money. They are becoming the kind of person who saves money. And that distinction, which sounds like semantics, is actually everything. When your actions are driven by willpower, they are fragile. Willpower gets depleted. Life gets in the way. One hard month and the habit is gone. But when your actions are driven by identity, they are durable. You do not skip your savings transfer because you are the kind of person who saves. Not because you have more discipline than anyone else, because you have built an identity that makes saving feel like who you are. This is exactly why the research consistently shows that people who automate their savings are far more successful than people who save manually. Not because automation is some magic trick, but because automation removes the decision from the domain of willpower and makes it structural. It happens before your identity has a chance to argue with itself. There is another dimension to this that I find genuinely fascinating, and it is about how reaching $10,000 completely changes your relationship with money itself. Before you have savings, money feels like water running through your hands. It arrives, it disappears, and you are constantly trying to cup your hands tightly enough to hold some of it. Every dollar you spend is a dollar gone forever. This creates a scarcity relationship with money that actually makes you worse at managing it, because it means every single financial decision feels extremely high stakes. But when you have $10,000 sitting in an account, something really interesting happens. Individual transactions start feeling less overwhelming, not because you become careless, but because you stop relating to every dollar as though it might be the last one you ever see. And this, counterintuitively, makes you more strategic with your spending. You stop obsessing over the $4 coffee and start optimizing the $1,200 rent. You stop agonizing over name brand versus generic pasta and start asking whether your car insurance is actually competitive. You zoom out. The research on this is pretty clear. People with financial buffers make better financial decisions on average, not because they are smarter people, but because they are less emotionally activated by financial choices. When the stakes feel lower, you think more clearly. And when you think more clearly, you make better decisions, which leads to better outcomes, which helps you build even bigger savings. It is a virtuous cycle. And it starts right here at 10,000. Here is a concrete piece of research that I think is genuinely eye-opening. A study published in the journal Psychological Science found that people experiencing financial scarcity performed significantly worse on cognitive tests compared to the same people when they felt financially secure. The effect on cognitive performance was equivalent to losing approximately 13 IQ points. 13 points. Not because those people were less intelligent, because financial stress was consuming mental bandwidth that would otherwise be available for actual thinking. That bandwidth is exactly what you get back at $10,000. And what you do with it, the opportunities you start noticing, the risks you become willing to take, the conversations you are suddenly willing to have, that is where the real transformation happens. Here is something that might actually blow your mind a little. The person with $10,000 saved is closer to financial independence than someone with zero savings, even if that second person earns twice as much money. I know that sounds impossible. Let me break it down. Financial independence is not determined by income. It is determined by the gap between what you earn and what you spend, combined with the habits and skills that allow you to manage that gap consistently over time. You almost certainly know people who make great salaries and are somehow still completely broke. Nice cars on finance, rent on an apartment that stretches them thin, streaming subscriptions they forgot they signed up for, and a general relationship with money that treats income as something to be spent the moment it arrives. The $10,000 saver has done something more important than earn money. They have proven to themselves that they can keep money. And the skills it takes to get to 10,000, the delayed gratification, the awareness of your spending patterns, the ability to tell the difference between what you want and what you actually need, those are the exact same skills that create financial independence at larger scales. The habit is the foundation. The number is just the proof that the habit is real. This is why I always say that reaching your first 10,000 is not really about the 10,000. It is about who you become in the process of earning it, the patience you build, the clarity you develop, the ability to look at a purchase and honestly ask yourself whether it is moving you toward the life you want or away from it. These are not financial skills. They are life skills. And once you have developed them, they apply to everything. So let us get practical. Because understanding why $10,000 matters is one thing. Actually knowing how to get there is something else entirely. The most common mistake people make is trying to save too aggressively too fast. They have a moment of real motivation. They cut everything. They transfer $500 a month into savings, and then real life shows up. An unexpected expense, a genuinely rough month, a moment of just wanting to feel normal again, and the whole plan falls apart. And because the plan fell apart, they confirm the story they already believed about themselves, that they cannot do this, that they are bad with money. The better approach is honestly kind of boring. Start with an amount so small it literally cannot fail. $25 a month, $50 a month, an amount that feels almost pointless. Automate it on payday so it leaves your account before you even notice it is gone. And do not touch it for anything except a genuine emergency. The goal in the early stages is not to accumulate money quickly. The goal is to change your identity. To reach a point where you genuinely think of yourself as someone who saves money because you have been doing it consistently long enough that it has become part of how you see yourself. Once that identity is locked in, increasing the amount gets a whole lot easier because now you are not fighting your own self-image. You are reinforcing it. And here is a reality check that I think is actually pretty motivating. Research suggests the average person spends roughly $2,000 to $3,000 per year on what I would call lifestyle leakage. Coffee runs, impulse purchases, subscription services they completely forgot about, food delivery fees, convenience buys that feel small individually and add up to something enormous collectively. I'm not saying cut all of that. Some of it genuinely matters to your quality of life. But if you audited that spending honestly and redirected even 30% of it towards savings, you would hit $10,000 in under 4 years, starting from nothing. 4 years might sound like a long time, but 4 years from now will arrive whether you save or not. The only question is whether you get there with $10,000 or without it. Let me close with something I think is more important than any of the data I have shared today. The transformation that happens when you save your first $10,000 is not really about money. It is about proof. It is about having demonstrated to yourself in the most concrete and undeniable way possible that you are capable of doing something difficult and important, even when it is inconvenient, even when you would rather not, even when life pushes back hard. Most of the anxiety people carry around money is not actually about money. It is about not trusting themselves to handle what comes next, not trusting their own judgment, not trusting their own ability to manage uncertainty. And the proof that dissolves that anxiety is not reading more books about personal finance or watching more videos about money psychology. It is doing the thing, month after month, building the number, watching it grow. When you reach $10,000, something shifts that has absolutely nothing to do with your bank balance. You realize you are the kind of person who builds things. Not because someone told you that you were, but because you have the evidence right there in your account. And that evidence follows you everywhere, into salary negotiations and job interviews, into difficult conversations and long-term decisions, into every moment when life asks you whether you can handle what is right in front of you. The answer, the one you carry in your gut rather than just your head, becomes yes. Because you have already done it. Because you have the proof. Start wherever you are. Not tomorrow. Not when things settle down. Not when you earn a little more, or spend a little less, or feel a little more ready. Start today. Even if the first transfer is $25, even if it takes longer than you would like. The person you become while saving your first $10,000 is worth more than the money itself. And that person, the one with the patience and the proof and the quiet confidence that only comes from doing a hard thing, is the person who builds everything that comes after. So there you have it, $10,000. Not a luxury, not some distant dream, a foundation. Go build it. Everything changes after.